July of 2003, we went down to LSA Anaconda, and that was roughly 1 mile away from Balad, which is about 20 miles north of Baghdad. And that night, we had just set up our tents. And I remember coming out, we were told, we had been there for a couple days, and we were told that they were going to be bombing Balad. So I went outside, and it was July 3rd. And all of a sudden, you just heard all these jets going over, and the rockets are launched, and you just see all these explosions happening in this little, and I remember thinking to myself, wow, this really reminds me of the 4th of July. And in that moment, you're not thinking anything about it because you're just kind of in shock, right? Thank you, appreciate you. You're just kind of in shock. And, but after I came back, I never have been able to it's not my favorite holiday. Anyway, all right, so while we're there, thank you again. I mean, we had, LSA Anaconda was also known as Mortar Row, right? We had incoming mortars every night. And thankfully, they were shit shots. So we did, of course, have, like I said, incoming mortars every single night. And I remember going out in the smoking area, and I was talking to a buddy of mine, because that's where our rotary phone was. And all of a sudden, you hear a whistle, and it's like, and you're like, wow, that sounds close. And then I heard, I was like, that was really close. And then I heard, and it stopped. At that point, shit's hit the fan, because it's right on top of you. So I immediately turned and ran for the door as it hit and exploded on the other side of the building. So yeah. About a couple months later, I, of course, mental health NCOIC. So I had a very sweet young kid come into my office, and we'll call him Ricky, right? And that's not his name. It's been a hot minute. I don't even remember his name, but now Ricky was not able to stay there, and I was selected to go ahead and help transport Ricky back to the hospital in Germany. And I believe it was I'm trying to remember the military installation that we went to, Ramstein, which was great, I was pretty excited about that, So we go from LSA Anaconda, and when we took off, of course, they have you in jump seats, along the sides of the plane. And you're strapped in. And when we took off from LSA Anaconda, the plane took what we call a corkscrew. So it went almost straight up and then started to screw up in the air. So we literally were flowing, and that's to avoid the incoming fire. So that was, of course, an experience. And then we get to Baghdad, and we're there for a few hours, and we loaded back in a plane. Now this one was Freedom Bird, is what we call them. And it was a medevac. So the individuals that were not wounded were put in the jump seats along the side of the plane. The ones that were wounded were stacked on top of each other, more severely wounded, were stacked on top of each other in the middle of the plane, and I would say probably at least 5 cots high. And I don't even remember how long, but at least I want to say 7 or 8, maybe 10 rows deep. And I know that sounds really traumatic, but the atmosphere at that moment, because here we're getting ready to leave Baghdad, right? And it's almost joyous. People are laughing and they're joking, and everyone's just starting to relax a little bit, because when you're over there, you're constantly tense, because you don't know what's going to happen. At that moment, people felt the ability to breathe. And then the pilot came on. And he said, due to regulations, he was required to let us know that we were traveling. he was required to let us know we were traveling with human remains. At that moment, there was like a hush. You could hear a pin drop. And I remember looking towards the front of the plane, and just beyond the duffel bags was a coffin draped with the American flag. It was, I want to say, close to a 9-hour flight. And during that time, you have a lot of time to think. So, of course, you're thinking to yourself, how old is he? Is it someone you know that it hurt? But the one thing I knew was that that flag that was covering him would soon be handed to someone that loved him more than life itself. So when veterans respond poorly, when someone's burning the flag, it's because it means something to us. You hear a lot of things about people thinking that we're just over there for bullshit reasons, like resources. It wasn't the case. And I refuse to believe that because he didn't die in vain. None of them died in vain. So anyway, I would say that's probably my most memorable experience over in Iraq. So, spent the next 4 weeks. It was really weird. So we landed in Germany, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I stood and I just listened to the wind going through the leaves. And it was beautiful. Because there's no trees over there. There's no green grass over there. It's a desert, you know, not a whole lot to look at. And I remember thinking to myself, when I hit United States soil, I literally got down and kissed the ground because I was so excited to be home.